What's up, beautiful people? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Munodiwa, and this is Casa Chaps, where we talk all things home to interior design and everything in between. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing 7 mistakes you absolutely want to avoid at all costs when you have a small kitchen. So these are mistakes that will make your space look small, stuffy, cluttered, and not pleasant at all during the time you are preparing meals to share with you and your family, or maybe to just have alone. Or perhaps you could have a sitting area in this kitchen. And these are mistakes that will definitely make that kitchen not nice, to be in overall. So let's get right into it. 1, using wall ovens. So this is a big mistake that you really want to avoid. But firstly, let's take it back to the beginning, right? What is a wall of oven? What is it good for? And overall, why should you consider this to begin with? So there are different layouts of a kitchen that you may or may not be aware of. Some kitchens are what we call a U form, where the shape of the kitchen makes a U, or perhaps it's a G, something that has a peninsula, or it's a line, just straight up. So whatever the shape of your kitchen is, there are different options to consider as to how you want to access your oven. So you can either have it under your stove, or you could have it separate onto a wall unit, into a tall wall unit, right? And then you could perhaps have 2 ovens if you're that much of a baker, or you could have the oven on top and the microwave underneath, or the other way around. So this is what I'm referring to when I'm talking about a wall of ovens. So why would one want to have a wall of ovens to begin with? Well, most importantly, they're good because it's easy to access this wall of oven, right? So you're standing, you don't have to bend down, and a lot of people these days quite prefer that. People want ease of use, people don't want to bend, we've gotten also lazy, I guess. But this is one of the reasons why you might want to prefer a wall of oven. And there are other reasons. A lifestyle choice. If you're that much of a baker, you could perhaps want to divide up your kitchen into different zones. Perhaps you want to have the cooking zone, the prep zone, the cleanup zone, and then the baking zone, so just knowing that when I'm in this area, I have my countertops for baking, and I have the drawers under and on top, and the cabinets stuffed with all my baking stuff. And so when I'm baking, I don't even have to move that much. I can just stay in my corner, make everything ready, and then pop it into the oven. So these are different reasons why one might consider having this wall of ovens, right? And these all seem good. But you could be like me and you're perhaps thinking, okay, but what about the other option? What advantages are there for not having your oven installed in a separate tall utility area? Well, you can then create a focal point when you have your stove and the oven underneath it. You can really create a focal point of that area. Imagine how beautiful it would look when you have your stove right there. You can create some nice symmetry. And then if you're a dramatic person, behind your stove, you could put a beautiful backsplash, perhaps made out of marble, if that's, within the budget. And all your eyes and all your senses are just drawn to this feature the moment you step into the kitchen. But let us bring it back to small kitchens, because all these are dreams and wonders, but in a small kitchen, perhaps this is already a bit too much to even consider. Now, in a small kitchen, the reason why having a wall of ovens might not be so advisable is because it really means that you are taking away some countertop space and utilizing it to insert your oven. Indeed, it's true that when it comes to space, perhaps you don't really stand to lose much, because the space underneath the stove where the oven would have been is still going to be usable as drawers or cabinets for whatever it is that you might want. But when it comes to countertop space, because you now have this tall utility space and you're using a big chunk of it to store your oven, that means that most of the countertops have disappeared. And in a small kitchen, countertops are already an issue. So you really might want to reconsider this decision. And not only that, think about how easy it is going to be to move from the stovetop to the oven. Already this is going to create some high traffic, and yet in an optimized version where the stove and the oven are right underneath each other, that would mean that when you're cooking, you can easily access the baking without having to walk and access the oven, therefore creating some potential traffic bottlenecks. So overall, if you have a small kitchen, having a wall of ovens is great. We've talked about the benefits, it's easily accessible and so on. But in a small kitchen, you probably just want to stick to a standard version where you have your stovetop on top and the oven underneath, and that's it. 2, having a U or a G kitchen floor plan. Earlier on, I already alluded to the different kinds of kitchen plans that exist, or floor shapes, right? I spoke about the L kitchen, the U kitchen, the G kitchen. But now let's think about all of these shapes, especially the U and the G kitchen in consideration to a small kitchen, right? And in a small kitchen, the problem with having these two is that they really limit the amount of floor. Already your floor plan is small, and it really starts to create a sort of bubble where you feel stuck inside this U or inside this G. You have to consider that each time you create a corner, you will most likely create a dead space there. It will be very difficult for you to access that corner, unless of course you're willing to use some innovative shelving systems or innovative drawer systems, which will make it easy for you to access those dark and difficult corners. But overall, I would say that having a line kitchen where everything is on one wall would be better, or at the very least, if you need the space, then you would split it between the two walls, but not create a corner by joining those two lines. In fact, U and G kitchen layouts are not really a good option, be it a small, medium, or large kitchen, because of this feeling of being trapped that they create. 3, adding a kitchen island. At this point, you're probably like, wait, what? I was with you the whole time, but now I'm not pretty sure I follow. So, of course, the dream is the kitchen island, right? It's amazing. It's a great layout. It's got a lot of function. You can have a butcher block on one end and use it for chopping your vegetables. You can put seating on one end. You can even put your sink on the other end, and then you could have that sink opposite your cooker, and then you have a nice access to the sink, and life is good. I mean, who doesn't want a kitchen island? It really does sound good. But for you to have a kitchen island, it means that you are giving up on something in a small kitchen, and usually that is circulation. Now, circulation is very, very, very important, and more so in a small kitchen, obviously, because already space is tight. So usually adding a permanent island is not really a good idea, unless of course you have at least 900 millimeters, which is about 0.9 meters on each side of the island, to ensure that circulation is okay, and also to ensure that it abides by the standards. And usually most standards are that it has to have 900 millimeters minimum circulation space. Now, what if you're thinking, okay, I don't have enough countertop space already, I still need more, I need my prep zone, what's the plan? And besides, I need to be able to store away some things, because islands are also great for that. I hear you. For this reason, I would suggest then having a smaller table, high table, to use as an island. Many options available, and the good thing about having such a table is that you can move it. There are many that come with wheels, so you can move it within the kitchen and create space when you're cooking in one area. And it can then serve as a place to eat, and you can use it as storage underneath if it has drawers. You can also use it as a prep zone. So in the end, you really are gaining more with that, rather than putting a real built-in island in your kitchen. 4, gas versus induction. Now, I know this is a big one, because I know that there are people that swear by gas, and I think I understand where they come from, right? The food does taste better. Usually it's saving, and it just gives you a real feeling like I'm a professional, I'm using some real fire. But on the other hand, there's induction, and the benefits of induction are really also quite a lot. It's quite energy efficient, it is modern technology, it's quiet, it's easy to clean, and we could go on and on and on about the benefits and minuses of each side. But what we want to focus on right now is why gas might not be the best option in a small kitchen. So gas is flammable, as you know, it's open flame, and because it's an open flame, it produces fumes, and because it produces fumes, then by building code you need to install a ventilator. And now, depending on the size of your gas cooker, you might need a bigger size of a hood, and this might not be possible in a small kitchen. So to keep things safe, to keep things clean, easier, and to just maybe have less struggle, I would strongly recommend that you consider an induction in place of a gas stove. And also considering that the risk of fire in a smaller space is more likely, you really don't want to have open flames and perhaps you're frying something and all of a sudden something splatters and you have some oil going left and right and then they go into your open flame and then they cause a fire. That would really not be a good situation. And because everything is so tight and close together, that could easily start a very big fire. So in this case, I would highly recommend induction. 5, colored appliances versus stainless steel. Well, basically there's more options to this actually. There are 3 options. You could either go with colored appliances, appliances that are nice to look at, all those vibrant colors, all those smeg mugs, smeg fridge we've seen around. Or you could go with a classic stainless steel. Everything looks new, everything looks shiny, everything looks bright. Or you could even go with panel ready appliances and everything is out of sight, out of mind. No one would be able to tell where the fridge is or where the kettle is, everything is tucked away. So what are the advantages of each of these? Well, firstly, the colored appliances, I do have to give it to them that they add some character into the space. Just with a nice vibrant fridge or a nice vibrant kettle, you can already show some things about you. You can show that you're eclectic, you can show that you're different, you can show what your favorite color is. It makes things interesting, I do have to say. But on the other hand, it really depends on the type of kitchen that you're going for, because this is not a look for all kinds of kitchens. And this can also draw attention to these appliances. And when you have another focal point within that space, it can tend to clash and be a little bit too much, too easily. Now let's move on to stainless steel. Stainless steel is nice. Stainless steel is clean. It really gives modern vibes and it also reflects light, so it can easily make a small space look bigger. And generally, a lot of people like stainless steel appliances. And so in the near future, if you're thinking of perhaps reselling your home or selling these appliances, you might have it easier and faster when you're trying to get rid of it and sell it. Now, on the other hand, you might think this is not a lot of character, it's boring, and besides it does draw some amount of attention to itself, perhaps not as bad as the colored appliances, but still, when you have a double door stainless steel fridge, it's right there and it's just like a huge chunk of steel that's there, and in a small kitchen that can also be a little bit too much. And not only that, they do attract a lot of fingerprints. You get to see all the marks, the stains, the oils. And in a small kitchen, again, this is something that is more likely to happen, especially with the oil. And when the oil mixes with the dust, then generally you're not going to like that situation. So you might want to really think about what choice is best for you. Now, lastly, let's think about panel ready. I have to put a disclaimer and say that perhaps I'm a bit biased here, but come on, who wouldn't want paneled appliances? Out of sight, out of mind. It looks neat. It just looks like a wall of cabinets. Everything is just integrated. Everything looks beautiful. Everything is united. Having something that stands out in a small space draws attention to itself, like I said previously. But now everything looks uniform, and this is what's good in a small space, right? Because you want everything to look as uniform as possible, so that it's not so obvious that, oh, here are divisions, here are boundaries, oh, this is small. But on the other hand, panel ready appliances, I know that in the US, they're not really a thing, which still surprises me, because in Europe, or specifically in Germany where I'm from, this is almost a no-brainer. In fact, almost everyone has panel ready stuff. They're tucked away behind all the cabinetry and it looks beautiful and integrated. So I know that perhaps accessing panel ready stuff is perhaps not so easy depending with where you live, but you can always customize it. You can always find ways around this. And I know that panel ready appliances perhaps are not the style for every kitchen. If you want something eclectic, if you want something different, then perhaps there is an advantage there. Now that I've talked about all 3 types of appliances that you can consider, I think I've aimed out some disadvantages already. I would still recommend that the first consideration in a small kitchen would be panel ready appliances, and then having a separate cabinet for all the small appliances if possible, so that everything really stays neat and uncluttered. 6, a two-tone kitchen. So you might have seen this whilst you're scrolling around or whilst you're on Pinterest. This is when the upper part of the kitchen has another color, the lower part of the kitchen has another color, and sometimes, you could even add in a third color there of the island perhaps. Now this is very beautiful. It really makes sense for people who perhaps have commitment issues to one color, or perhaps people who think that one color will feel a bit flat. You know, white kitchens are beautiful, they're timeless, but perhaps you're like, you know what, we've had centuries almost of white kitchens. Can we go towards something else? And so, you know, in that regard, it really makes sense. It could also be because perhaps you want to experiment with wood and paint. You don't want to fully commit to a fully wood kitchen, as that could also be overwhelming if done wrongly. So, you know, there are different reasons why one would like to explore a two-tone kitchen. It truly does look good. And in terms of design, it not only gives a kitchen some character, but it also makes it look super modern, as well as, you know, just avoiding that whitewashed look. You know, someone came and just put in a bunch of white or whatever color it is and just call it a day. So it keeps things interesting. A two-tone kitchen can easily make or break a small kitchen. And therefore, I would like to share some general guidelines that can enhance the decisions that you have to think about before you just dive in and then color your kitchen 2 colors and call it a day. Right? 1. In a small two-tone kitchen, it's absolutely important that the backsplash matches the upper cabinets. Earlier on, I mentioned that in a small kitchen, it's very important to make it uniform and minimize any boundaries, any visible joints, any visible demarcations. You really want everything to appear like one single unit so that it looks bigger, because the moment you see many divisions, you are then aware of the whole space and dimension, and then it becomes more obvious that the space is actually smaller. So when the backsplash matches the upper cabinets, it really streamlines everything, at least from eye level upwards. And especially if you make that color light, that will really then also make the kitchen feel way more lighter and way more airy, and perhaps a tinge of big. Because imagine what would happen if you have a lot of upper cabinets and they're dark, and you also have a lot of lower cabinets and they're dark, and you're in a small space. It feels almost enclosing. It feels almost as if it's choking you in, right? So to have this kind of freeing sense, you want to counteract that with a light color. But whatever the case, or whatever colors you end up going for, just make sure that the backsplash matches the upper cabinets. Number 2, in connection with what I've alluded to earlier on, you want the upper cabinets to be lighter in color, and then ideally you want a more darker color beneath that, so that it grounds the space. So you don't want everything seeming like it's floating in space, but you want it to feel grounded. And so the lower part of the cabinets can then have a darker color. And the beauty of this is that it minimizes the appearance of any things. Perhaps you don't have panel ready appliances, or perhaps you have some gaps in that cabinetry to occupy other appliances. Perhaps you have your dishwasher there, you also have your washing machine in your kitchen, and so having the lower cabinets being darker will conceal all these distractions and will keep your eye away from that. It won't draw attention to all these things. But in all honesty, ideally a small kitchen shouldn't have any upper cabinets at all. I know you're thinking, okay, but I don't have space for that. That's true, but that's why I said ideally, right? So in case you're ever going to rearrange your kitchen, you want to optimize the lower cabinets so that they fit everything that you have. And you know, sometimes when you rush and start to say, oh, I won't have what I need, perhaps start to go through what you have and purge some things. Sometimes it's about reducing what you have in order to create space, and not really an expansion of the physical space itself. So ideally, a small kitchen should not have uppers because of this enclosing effect, but I know that this is not always realistic. Perhaps 2 cabinet uppers and some open shelves would work. But at the end of the day, it's that your kitchen should work for you. And so if you feel like you need absolutely upper cabinets, then go for it. Lastly, let's talk about pulls versus knobs. Ideally, in a medium-sized or large kitchen, you have a different mixture of hardwares that you're going to use to open the doors and drawers in your kitchen. So you can have pulls on the doors and some knobs on the drawers. But in a small kitchen, this variation might be a little bit tricky to strike, and usually then people stick to one fixture, and usually it's the pulls. But having a lot of pulls in a very small area looks very strange. In fact, it creates a lot of attention to themselves, because imagine have all these dishes in a small space. You're gonna really notice them. So let's talk about other types of hardware that you can install on it. So having hardware in a kitchen is very important, right? Because you do want to be able to open and close your doors and your drawers. And there are different options that you can consider. There are pulls, there are knobs. But there are also other options like press to open, and there are also like finger recesses where you just put your finger under the cabinet and you pull it open. Now in a kitchen, the one I would really say to avoid, whether it's a small or a large kitchen, are push to open or push to close. Because imagine you have to touch that with your bare hands, and obviously fingerprints are going to be all over. Sometimes your hand is wet, so you're going to directly touch a cabinet open, and sometimes your hands have oil or salt or spices or tomato sauce, and all these things that you don't want on your cabinet are most likely going to end up on your cabinet. So I would really say, of all the types of hardwares that you can choose for your cabinets, avoid the push to pull, push to close option. But the finger recesses would be my personal recommendation. Why? Because pulls in a small area really attract a lot of undue attention to themselves. And they are also quite non-flattering because of their linear form, right? Imagine having all these dashes in your small kitchen, and they draw quite a lot of attention to themselves. So what you want to do is to use the same formula that you would in a medium-sized or large kitchen, that you mix up your pulls and your knobs. Pulls for your doors and knobs for the drawers. Also go a step further and just take away all the pulls and then replace them with knobs. Knobs are more softer because of their circular shape, and so they just make the whole space look better. Because remember that your cabinets are a lot of lines, right? So we have a lot of lines there. Some are vertical for the doors, some are horizontal for the drawers, and then if you add pulls again, that's just a lot of lines going on. But if you then, disrupt this line pattern and you put something a bit more circular, something more nice, you can even go for a different shape of a knob. There are many shapes available. You can even want to go eclectic and perhaps choose an animal shaped hardware. Whatever it is, you really can then soften all those lines in the kitchen. Overall, these are the 7 things or 7 mistakes that I would really avoid to make in a small kitchen. I'll catch you in the next one.